Boston Celtics. This series has been a roller coaster ride with each team rising and falling throughout, but it's a winner takes all, and it goes down tonight on ESPN. This will be the second Eastern Conference Finals Game 7 between these two teams, and a decade ago, the Heat won Game 7 in Miami. For more, here's Nick Friedel and Tim Bontemps.
The Heat feel like they were built for this moment. They feel like this is what their culture is all about, finding a way to win when the rest of the world thinks they can't. Jimmy Butler has a team full of players that think just like him, that are convinced they can will themselves across the finish line no matter what circumstances they face. That's why Eric Spoelstra's team is brimming with confidence as they prepare for the biggest game of the year. They've always believed they were the most mentally tough team on the block. Now they get another chance to prove it, with Butler coming off one of the best performances of his career. There's no two better words in pro sports than Game 7, Spoelstra said Friday night, especially in the Heat's case, when you have Butler leading the way. Now for more on the Celtics, here's Tim Bontemps.
Nick, when Jason Tatum was asked about his team's chances of winning Game 7 on the road, he didn't hesitate to answer. Scale of 1 to 10, Tatum asked with a smile. 10. Boston knows it gave away a golden opportunity to wrap this series up in Game 6. But the Celtics already won an elimination game in Milwaukee last round. They've won 2 games in Miami this time around. They believe they can make it a third. We've got to come out, Jaylen Brown said, and find a way to win.
ESPN, the winner, gets Tampa on one damn day.
Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat facing elimination here tonight in Game 6 on the road.
They don't know we on. They don't see that we grinding. You know we gon' show highlights, no highlights.
Jimmy Butler continues his remarkable bounce-back game.
Trying to stop us, no, no.
Butler turns, fires, it's good! We have a Game 7.
Game 7, we got to come out and find a way to win.
We get to take it back to the crib and win Game 7.
All right, so the Celtics are 2.5-point favorites to win on Sunday night in Miami, according to Caesars Sportsbook, but ESPN's BPI makes the Heat slight favorites. Celtics 25-9 all time in Game 7s, the most wins and best winning percentage of any franchise. Miami 6-4 in Game 7. So, question is, what do Jalen Rose and Stephen A. expect to see Sunday? They're with our Malika Andrews.
Gentlemen, the Miami Heat, they forced a Game 7 back in their house. Stephen A., I want to start with you on the Celtics side of things. What do they need to do to close this series out?
How about not replicating your effort in Game 6? How about Jaylen Brown scoring more than 2 points in an entire second half? How about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown not combining for a grand total of 1 shot in the first 11 minutes of a fourth quarter? That would help. That would help immensely. Though these are the 2 stars of the Boston Celtics. Now that Jimmy Butler has reminded you, there is a star on the Miami Heat coming for you. It's incumbent upon the stars to step up and answer the call. We know about everything else they got to do defensively and what have you, and do your job as supplementary parts. But Game 7s come down to the stars, and the stars for the Boston Celtics have got to show up. Otherwise, we're going to remember them not so fondly for years to come from this one.
And if you're the Miami Heat, the best player on either team is going to drive the narrative in Game 7. Stephen A. just mentioned it, and that was Jimmy Butler in Game 6. Can it also be him in Game 7? But here's the difference. At home, your role players perform better. So we saw Kyle Lowry play well today and knock down shots, 18 points, 10 assists. Strus started to make shots. If they can find Bam Adebayo's offense on their home floor, the Miami Heat got a terrific chance to close out this series.
Well, and Jimmy Butler, he took a load on in this Game 6. I asked Eric Spoelstra whether or not he was concerned at all about his minutes, what he needs to do, and he said, you know what, Jimmy's going to do whatever it takes to be ready for that Game 7, not replicate what happened in the bubble when he laid it all out there. He said this is a different point in the season, and he believes they can do it, Stephen A.
That means he believes in Jimmy Butler, as everyone does. Medical staff, MVPs of this game, one could argue. But I'll tell you this, we didn't bring this up in the last several months, Jalen. All that conversation about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown coexisting with one another, obviously that's been thrown out of the window based on how Boston looked since the new year arrived. If they lose this series, who's to say that subject's not going to be broached again?
So we were talking about Jason Tatum as a top 10 player for sure.
Absolutely.
And people were elevating him on paper ahead of a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's already led the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals. In today's game, Jason Tatum in the fourth quarter, 1 shot attempt, as he said, and 4 turnovers. It's going to be imperative for him to show up, in particular for a team that's been to the conference finals 4 times.
I think it's safe to say the days of underestimating Jimmy Butler have come to an end.
It's over. The days of underestimating Jimmy Butler are over. We get to see it all play out in Game 7. The 2 best words in sports other than weekend off is Game 7, and we get to see it. Back to you guys in the studio.
To ever reach the NBA Finals 6 times in an 8-year span. Now, the last team to do it was Michael Jordan's Bulls. Remember those runs they had? They made 3 straight from 1991 to 1993, then made it 3 straight years again from 96 to 98. After MJ took some time off to play minor league baseball, they won all 6 titles. The Magic and Kareem Showtime Lakers put together a few runs of 6 and 8. Overall, they made 8 finals trips in 10 years from 1980 to 89. Jerry West's Lakers also did it from 1962 to 1973, making 9 finals trips in that 12-year span, but they only managed 1 championship. They beat the Knicks in 1972. And finally, Bill Russell's Celtics made 12 finals appearances from 1957 to 1969. They won 11 of them. Their only loss was in 1958 to the St. Louis Hawks. More now from Greenberg and the Countdown crew.
Stephen A. Smith joins us once again from Boston. And Stephen A., if we were right all the time in our business, you and I'd go to Vegas and we get the penthouse and we just bet on games and win them all, right? But if you're going to be wrong, at least you got to see a performance like we saw from Butler tonight, and this series goes back to Miami Game 7. I just wonder, you've seen a lot of great performances. Frame for me how you feel Butler performed on this stage.
Well, I'm sitting here shell-shocked. I was absolutely stunned at the spectacular performance that Jimmy Butler had, not because I thought he wasn't capable of it if healthy. Like I told you, last game, watching these guys over the last 2 games, it felt like an infirmary. Kyle Lowry was hurt. Jimmy Butler was hurt. Strus was hurt. Everywhere you look, Oladipo was the only one that looked relatively healthy. He only had 3 points last game. You watch these guys get off the team bus. You watch these guys walk into the locker room following their Game 5 loss. They look like they could barely walk. That's why I thought it was all but a guarantee that Boston would close them out. But somehow, some way, the medical staff of the Miami Heat looked like they deserved the MVP outside of Jimmy Butler because he was absolutely spectacular and unstoppable. He was a man amongst boys. There's no doubt about that. But let's be honest. Yep. On our worst day, we cannot assume that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum would spend the first 11 minutes of a fourth quarter taking 1 shot.
Yep.
1. Jaylen Brown scored 2 points in the entire second half. On his worst day, nobody would have ever predicted that. And so when you look at it from that perspective, the level of inefficiency, the lack of aggression, the inability to get off in any way, shape, form, or fashion is not something you anticipated would happen. Jimmy Butler dropping 47, that is the story, and it deserves to be the story. But if there's a second-tier story, it's the fact that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were no-shows in the fourth quarter. In terms of attempts, not even makes, attempts, that's what we're talking about here. That's why we're going to have a Game 7 back in South Beach.
Yeah, Stephen A., old guys like you and me remember, the Fred Sanford walk, right? Like, literally, they got off the bus. I saw Kyle Lowry, and he's walking like Fred G. Sanford, and then they found something. And it was remarkable because we had P.J. Tucker on earlier, and no one doubts the greatness of this team if they're right, but they didn't look right in games 4 and 5. So right. that's what made this so shocking. Boston's shown quite a capacity to go on the road and win, both against Milwaukee and against Miami, and they have superstar players. Predicting anything in this series is a fool's errand, but I just wonder, based on that fourth quarter in particular, what's your sense of what you think you'll see from the road team Sunday night in Miami out of Boston?
Well, listen, Game 7 is for all the marbles. We understand that. The reality of the situation is that all the pressure is on the shoulders of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They've been in Eastern Conference Finals before. How many are you going to lose? That's the question. Jimmy Butler recently got to the NBA Finals. The same can't be said about Tatum and Brown. And by the way, the East doesn't look any weaker. Giannis Antetokounmpo is expected to have a healthy Chris Middleton next season. Joel Embiid might have some help next season. Atlanta might be back in the fold next season. Boston can't count on these chances being available to them. So Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are going to be called upon to step up, because I think it's fair to assume that Jimmy Butler is going to answer the call in the Game 7. And by the way, Kyle Lowry, a champion who looked like he could barely walk after the last game, shows up here and hits 4 3-pointers, gives you about 18 points, was efficient and a threat all night long. So the bottom line is this Game 7 in South Beach. I started this series saying Boston was going to win in 7. I'm going to stick to that. But I got Shaquille O'Neal bugging the living hell out of me, FaceTiming me after every quarter, telling me to call him Shaq-Adamus because he predicted that Miami was going to win this game and this series. So after I finish with you, Scott, I got to hear Shaquille O'Neal's mouth for the rest of the night, because he was telling me all game long Boston was going to lose, and he ended up being right.
Tell Shaq that Van Pelt says hello, and I'm sure you got Draymond in there. Tell Draymond that PJ Tucker said thank you. So if you could, if you got that in your plans for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing a couple minutes on SportsCenter as always. Be well. Enjoy your trip back to Miami, my man.
Well, you know I'm going to do that.
Yes.
Have a nice evening, Scott.
Indeed. Hit my guy Miles.